Okay, Diego. As you know, you have 15 minutes to present. After your presentation, you'll have a seat, and the Commission will ask you questions. You may start now.
Good afternoon, examiners. Here I'm going to explain my research study, which is called The Use of Personalized Learning to Improve Chilean EFL Teenage Students' Abilities to Carry Out Role-Play Activities. First one, the main context of this research study is the subjects, which are 20 students for first year of here in the UST, are part of English Basic 1, which is the first subject of English. And what is really important here is the use of the coursebook Touchstone 1. Okay? The context of the Touchstone itself, related to the text and images and every activity, is focused on English, or American English, New Zealand, Australian. But in this case, the subjects are part of health programs such as nursing, veterinary medicine, and medical technology. So the motivation to learn different cultures or learn the English culture is not as significant as for us, for example. So the research problem here is to find a corresponding strategy in order to focus on their interests and their needs. In this case, it was chosen the personalized learning strategy, together with role-play activities, which seems to be the more efficient and funny and attractive for students, very attractive activities. The purpose of this study is to encourage the use of this personalized learning strategy in order to be a base for a better assessment, because personalized learning this strategy focuses on students' needs and specifically in particular students. So it assesses personally and individually. So the research question states as follows: how does the use of this personalized learning strategy improve Chilean EFL teenage learners' abilities to carry out a set of role-play activities? And my research objectives are the following. The general one is to determine a possible relation, if any, of course, between the application of this strategy and the Chilean EFL teenage learners' ability to carry out these role-play tasks. The specific objectives in this case is to identify these Chilean EFL students' levels of achievement in the development of this role-play task, and the other one is to evaluate the impact of these strategies, the personalized learning, on their perceived oral production in these role-play tasks. The assumption or hypothesis in this case of this research study is that personalized learning significantly improves students' ability to carry out this role-play task due to its focus on students' needs and interest. Because of, as it was previously said, the personalized learning focuses on needs and interests of students. In the theoretical framework, I choose the two main concepts, which is the personalized learning, which is defined as a learning-centered strategy focused on students' needs of individuals, in this case, because it focuses in every student. And also it's focused on students' strengths, needs, and interests, as it's proposed here by Apple. The conceptual definition in this case that is going to be helpful and useful for this study is the fact that personalized learning focuses on student needs and interest of these students, these undergraduate programs, which is the nursery, the medical, the veterinary medicine, and the other one was the medical technology. And the other concept is role play, which according to the British Council, which gives a very informal definition, which is to put yourself into somebody else's shoes. In this case, obviously, is to perform an activity assuming a role in a real life context. And Holden also stated that role plays is apart from being an activity, is also a dramatization. So it's really helpful for students because they enjoy a lot of doing this activity. So it's also helpful in the case of achieving their needs and interests. And the conceptual definition is almost the same as the previous one, because these role-play activities need to be focused on their needs and interests in order to be motivating for them. In the methodological framework, these studies focus on a mixed approach, which is a mixture of the qualitative and quantitative one, but gathering all the benefits of both approaches. In this case, all the data collected during the whole process is purely quantitative, but it's needed to be an inference which is purely qualitative. So that's why it's the design is an explanatory sequential one, because as Fernandez and Baptista states, it's very helpful and useful to have a support from the quantitative data to support it by a qualitative one. So having both perspectives will gather a stronger data in this case. The methodological procedure is basically the materials elaboration. First, it was elaborated a lesson plan focused on 2 role-play activities. The first one was a role-play activity based on giving just directions, and the other one was focused on a doctor-patient situation. That's why it's connected with their interests and needs, because all of them were part of health programs. So it also will be needed an assessment rubric which is focused on assessing their performance in the role-play activities, and the Likert scale, in this case, which evaluates their perception of their oral production in the role-play activities. So after materials application, the data analysis collected all the rubric results into tables and graphs, and the Likert scale results into graphs and figures. The scenario subjects, the subjects mainly are, there were at the beginning 20 students for first year, part of English Basic 1. According to the placement test, they were classified as A2 English level, and most of them, as I previously said, were part of health programs. So in this case, English for them was not by their own choice, it was compulsory. So there were a lot of attendance problems, and it was related to anatomy, because they had these anatomy classes, so they missed English in order to study for this subject. They prioritized another subject which is not English in this case. So in the data collection and analysis, the application of role-play activities was made through a lesson plan, which is explained here. As it said, the pre, while, and post activities, both, the 3 of them are connected with the role-play itself. So it's a pre-activity in order to present the role-play, the while, which is both role-plays, and the post-activity, which is the presenting of it. And the assessment rubric is to evaluate their performance in these role-play activities. It's like a checklist where students are classified either B1 or A2 level according to a specific criteria here. And also the students' perceptions of their own performance is assessed through this Likert scale, which is here is an example, which is siento que lo hago mejor cuando la actividad tiene relación con lo que estudio. This is an example of the second statement from the Likert scale, and they all obviously have to decide whether they agree or disagree. The analysis of these materials gave the following results. In the assessment rubric, there was a 17% of improvement between the first and the second role-play activities. The first one, which is focused on giving directions, and the second one, which was focused on a doctor-patient, where was applied the strategy of personalized learning. And also, most of students got a A2 level in their first activity, which is the average one. And 5 out of 6 students got a B1 level in the first criteria. This is really important because the first criteria says able to handle communication in most familiar situations. we can understand by familiar situations everything which is related to them. Maybe their interests, maybe their needs, or maybe their preferences. And the Likert scale, this perception was mainly positive because in their own performance of the role play activities. They preferred the second role play activity instead of the first one, the second which was focused on personalized learning. And the students also preferred topics related to what they are currently studying. So instead of doing an activity based on a random topic, they prefer an activity based on what they are studying, in this case, health programs. In the case of the trustworthiness of this study, the credibility was set by a questionnaire which looked for their perceptions. In this case, to know their perceptions, it gives a kind of credibility to the study. As also in the case of the transferability, because the context was based on what students are currently studying. In the case of if it's going to be transferred into another context, it's just to focus on what the subjects are studying in the other context. And dependability, the instruments are totally changeable, but they keep the same essence. They have to look for the same data, but can be changeable in the way you look for it. And the confirmability, it used the Likert scale to cross with the assessment rubric in order to gather the data. The presentation here, the assessment rubric in the first role play activity was the following table, which is all these criteria and all the results, the number of subjects, and if they score a B1 or A2 level. Also, here in the second activity, as we can see, most of them in the first criteria got a B1 instead of an A2. Here it's more explicit because it says the first role play activity results, 67% of students got a A2 predominant level, opposing with the 33%. And in the second one, it was 50-50, it was like undecided. The Likert scale took the following scores based on what students answered, and the level of perception of the whole questionnaire, which was focused on if they feel comfortable with the activity, if they like the second activity more than the first one. It showed a 153% out of 180, which is a very good perception. And the total perception score from each statement is stated here as it can be seen. All the statements got a very high perception score. And finally, the research objective fulfillment. In this case, here explaining again the research, the objectives. In the case of the specific one, which is to identify the students' level of achievement, it was successfully identified through the assessment rubric. Their level of achievement in the role play activities will be achieved through this assessment rubric. And to evaluate the impact of these strategies on these learners' perceivable and production, it was also successfully evaluated through the Likert scale, which shows the previous result from the scale. And the general objective, which is to determine a possible relation, if any, it was a possible relation through the improvement. It was a 17% of improvement between the first and the second role play activity. So it can be a possible relation between the personalized learning strategy and the ability to carry out these role play activities. The limitations of this research, there was a dramatic reduction in the amount of students. First, they were 20 students, and they were then they were 10 because one section was closed. So from 20 subjects, at the end were just 10. And one student was studying another undergraduate program which was not related to a health program. Also, time constraints in the case of applying more role play activities in order to gather more data to be compared, and the attendance percentage, because from these 10 students that left in this section, only 6 could be assessed in the rubric and in the role play activities, because most of them miss classes a lot. The contributions is to encourage teachers to apply this personal learning strategy to a small amount of students in class. Also, to focus, to hardly focus on this in students' interests and needs, and personal and deeper assessment, because focuses on these needs and interests, it will give you a more personal and deeper assessment in the case of these activities. And the further research in the area, I consider like this question as very important, how to focus on particular needs and interests of a bigger class, because it's, for 10 students was too difficult to establish their needs and interests. So in the case of more students, like 30, 40, will be something to research about. And in the metacognitive analysis, one of the strengths was the communication and cooperation with the subjects. They were willing to go to cooperate, to participate in class, and they support all the research process. And one of the weaknesses was the time constraints, because we could have more time, more lesson plans. I could apply more role play activities in order to compare with all of them, to really decide if there was this relation achieved. And also the attendance of students, which was very poor in this case, because sometimes nobody student was in the class, so we had to wait like 20 minutes in order to wait for just one student. And one challenge, or more challenges, more elaboration, preparation, and application of these instruments. Because at the first time we got small amounts of classes to prepare and to elaborate these materials to be applied. So we needed more than the time that we got during this semester. And finally, my references.
Thank you.